Welcome to the Memory Alpha podcast. We are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Star Trek Wiki. Today with book author Andy is a dedicated model builder.
I have a cabinet behind my desk with Eagle Moss spaceships, Bandai ships. I've got the Enterprise A and the Enterprise E.
Alex, known as Schisma on Memory Alpha, talks about how the German community is split up.
Personally was a little annoyed by the whole discussion and somehow lost the interest. It's not that I'm mad with someone or...
And the legendary Bernd Schneider with the great Wolf 359 research on his website. And of course with Jan and Florian. Maybe we can talk a little bit about how the wiki changed over time. Schisma, you had the most experience of all of us working actively on Memory Alpha. I know the early times. I was there to start the German version. And at first everything started on a private website. Then we moved to the hoster, Wikia, Wikicities. Now it's fandom.com. How did you experience all the changes all the time?
I think at the beginning the website looked super crude, like all the wikis looked exactly the same, just different colors. The technology got better and we were able to upload vector graphics and things became prettier, like the resolution of the footage. We got high resolution, like DVD resolution. The web became more and more like the thing that I would have expected official websites to be like. At some point, like this Wikia got involved. I think I didn't notice it at first because when you had an account, you didn't see the ads and all the stuff. And if you have an ad blocker, you don't see the ads either. But once you notice like how everything looks when you like see it as a regular person without an ad blocker, I became a little disillusioned with the whole project. I thought maybe projects like this should be run by a non-profit.
Speaking of a non-profit website, Bernd, I just wonder how do you run your website? So you're paying all the bills for the website yourself? Do you have a sponsor or?
No sponsor, no donations. I can pay for everything myself, which isn't too much. Because what do I need? I need a server. I have a good friend who is doing this for almost 20 years. I think by now, and who has set up the basics server architecture for me, because I don't know anything about servers. I just know how to set up a website on a server. It's a nice price for the hosting, and then I need the domain names. So that's pretty much all. Plus, of course, hardware, software.
Alex, Schisma, you already told us you left Memory Alpha when the German Memory Alpha got split up into two different wikis, one with fandom.com and another independent wiki which is hosted on a private server.
I think it had to do with layout changes. I can't really remember. It had to do with layout changes that Fandom or Wikia made back then. And I personally was a little annoyed by the whole discussion and somehow lost the interest. It's not that I'm mad with someone or that I like the fork. I noticed later that a fork exists, but I didn't pay much attention to it because like the German Memory Alpha or Memory Alpha in general is run by like by a company, and that's how it is. But like the fork is run by somebody that I don't know and not like probably not agree with in every way. So I somehow became like disinterested in the whole thing.
Bernd, I think you already had a look on Memory Alpha over the years, how it changed, and how do you see the changes over the time?
So as Schisma already mentioned, in the beginning it was rather crude, like the whole internet was at the time the most important thing that happened. It was filled with information. So that is to me matters a lot more than how it exactly looks, because as long as it remains usable, I can find everything. Memory Alpha doesn't need the perfect look. It's an awesome resource, and people would use it anyway, even if it was a bit old-fashioned. So I did like the old layouts. As a reason of why I like the old layouts better, because as already mentioned, without an ad blocker, you have videos playing, and it's really annoying. It used to be better for the visitor. For the contributor, on the other hand, there are a lot of more functions. I have to admit, I didn't really try the editor as it is now, where you can do more like what you see is what you get, unlike in ancient times when you had to memorize certain markups to format your article. It's easier to get into the wiki with this what you see is what you get editor. I personally never had a problem with the markup. Only tables in classic markup, they are tricky. Tables in HTML are actually a lot easier than in wiki markup.
Yeah, and Andy, you completely did a different approach with having a paper book or a PDF book in contrast to an interactive site. Also, probably the style was very much in the foreground. What was your leading decision to do a PDF book rather than an interactive website?
Because I have zero skills when it comes to web design. Zero, less than zero. It's this is black magic. Websites exist, people do stuff, and then people can interact with them. I would love to get a really cool like LCARS interactive website where you click on stuff and pages. Coding, web design, anything like that, it just doesn't sit whatsoever. So I decided to write the story, and then working with Haim Adikian, he was able to turn it into to really beautiful LCARS displays. So if you read the book, especially on the tablet, it is like you're reading it on a pad, which is great. And again, I don't think this will come across because my camera's blurred, but I just you can kind of see in the book. It's
so that is really it looks fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd love a website which can kind of convey that. Just not got a clue how to do it. And I'm a big believer in paying people for their work, where everyone who contributed towards to the book, I made sure I compensated them for their time.
I see.
I can't afford to pay someone to do the website that I'd want to have to do that. So you have to read the PDF. Stick on your tablet.
Speaking of model building, little change of topic, model building. Shizma, Alex, do you have Star Trek models? Have you built Star Trek models at any time?
No, not really. I would love to have some like tin model or something like that looks cast or something, but I'm not happy with what I have seen for purchase.
But you have made several 2D variants of the models in the form of your schematics. How did you end up doing these?
Back then, I discovered that you can do a lot of things with vector graphics. You can plot it on like T-shirts. You can blow up the resolution, and you can do tiny little details like the airlock, like the markings around the airlock and the text next to the airlock. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't increase the file size. That's why there was this Star Trek fact files, and it was cool, and they had vector graphics, but they weren't digital. Like you couldn't blow them up and check what's written on the escape pods and stuff. And I wanted to have this. I think I'm not sure I achieved it. I hadn't that much time, but I noticed that you can reuse a lot of parts, like the warp missiles from one ship class and put it on a different ship class. Sometimes you have to rescale the windows, and that's it. like Starfleet around that time had a specific style. It had these like galaxy class shapes and just rearranged it in different configurations, and it feels very consistent. Like we decided to have this design for this period of time. I don't know why, and I wanted to capture like this fascination, like with
some of
design.
Some of these kit bashes from the time, especially around Galaxy class, they look really great, as such as New Orleans class.
I know we wanted to talk about models, but staying with the topic probably on Bernd, on your side, you also have a large database with size comparison charts. And where did you take your pictures there? Did you also redraw them or have them redrawn by some contributor?
Very different sources. Actually, I always try to find the best side views, but preferably side views that are drawn and not CGI, because recently you can have everything as CGI, but for those ships that existed before the CGI age, as physical models, I prefer the drawn side views, and so sources are Star Trek fact files, Star Trek the magazine. Some few are drawn by me. My skills are limited in this regard, and some are drawn by several other contributors. So sources are very different, and I try to keep them halfway consistent as style is concerned.
Yeah, but now to the model ships. So in your screen, I see already at least one small Enterprise, and I don't see what's behind there. So what do you have? What do you have in your fleet, in your physical fleet?
Okay, just one example. So my model building, it dates back some 20 years. I think I haven't built anything since then. The top of my closet was full, and I didn't want to buy all kinds of shelves for the model. So I said, okay, that's it for now. Well, this is one of my favorite models, of course, Enterprise E. I already talked about the fascination of Star Trek First Contact, and when that ship came out in the movie, it was obvious I also had to build it. On the topic of models, we should not forget the Eaglemoss models, because they released a lot of ships that hadn't been available as a model so far, and I think I already talked about this one, the Chekhov, a Springfield class, that is more or less directly based on what we found out some 20 years ago in the Wolf 359 research project, and we finally got some pictures of the ship several years later, and it was then built by Eaglemoss, including this obscure pod that we found out out about much later.
Andy, are you a model builder yourself? Do you have Eaglemoss models, or are you interested in Eaglemoss models? Eaglemoss is defunct now, and they are auctioning off everything which was produced at that time. Are you interested in this?
Well, let me put it this way. If we're still recording in an hour and 15 minutes, I'm dropping off to go and grab myself an Excel Cerritos model, but as soon as that drops. You know how it is. When something's freely available, you don't really care about it. I'll get to it at some point. Then Eaglemoss went boss. So now every time there's a drop, I'm like, I'm getting the ships I want. If I was at home when we were recording this, because again, I'm out at the minute, I have a cabinet behind my desk filled with Eaglemoss spaceships, with some Bandai ships. I've got the Enterprise A and the Enterprise E from Bandai. I've got Battlestar Galactica ships. I've got the Nostromo. I've got a thing for big grey bricks. So I have a lot of kind of like Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, Stargate ships in there. So yeah, I love models. I mean, I used to build model planes when I was a kid. I build model battleships. now as well. So I have models of HMS Hood and HMS King George V that I built as well. So yeah, I love building models. I'm a huge fan of Bill Kraus and his work. And Bill, we've spoken, graciously allowed me to use the USS Endeavour as one of the ships lost at 359. And seeing that he was then able to contribute ships, which ultimately became the Enterprise G. I may disagree with creative choices on the show, but I cannot fault the model work or Bill's designs at all. It was absolutely fantastic. And just to go back to the point you were making about designs, I'll send you this as a JPEG if you want as well. But yeah, we have the entire. Yeah, I'll send you as a JPEG. But we have all of the ships lost at 359, and that was done by Steve Johnson, who is the illustrator for the book, and he actually arranged the ships to scale inside a Borg cube. So when you look at the image, you've got a Borg cube and then 40 starships all fit inside that silhouette.